Welcome to this episode of TBR, a series of the EVPL Footnotes podcast. TBR stands for To Be Read, that pile of books sitting on your nightstand, bookshelf, or table just waiting to be read. This is the podcast for people who embody the phrase, so many books, so little time, and for those who want to ignite a love for reading. Every month we'll be highlighting a few of the new items coming to the EVPL collection, from books to movies to our library of things. All right, so we are here talking with Alex. Thank you for joining me, Alex.
Hello.
This is our June episode of the TBR podcast, as you heard at the top of the show. And so we're talking about all the things that are coming in to the library and it being added to the collection and things that just really particularly piqued our interest and things like that. I was told I should mention this. Probably the main reason I like to have a different guest host each time is this is not the what is Jamie interested in reading show. Because I can and will gravitate toward the things that most pique my interest. But there are just so many things available and so many people with so many different interests that including someone new is always guaranteed to bring a new perspective, some new ideas, a thing that I might not be interested in, but people in our audience might love to experience and so or read or watch or whatever it is we're talking about. So as we always do, we'll be going back and forth between Alex and I talking about what has caught our attention this time around. So Alex, why don't you start?
Oh, okay. Basically, I like to consider myself a big movie buff. Mm-hmm. I watch a lot of movies, but I do read. You know, don't get me wrong.
No judging,
I love reading, but I love watching movies too. And I saw a few that I see that are coming out on DVD that I thought would be amazing to check out. One of them, and I know this is one that I've actually, when I saw the trailer for the first time, I thought, oh yeah, I definitely have to see this, and I've yet to still see it.
Okay, so what is it?
I know, right? The anticipation is killing us. It's killing me too, and I know what it is. No, but it's The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Ooh.
About Nicolas Cage playing Nicolas Cage.
Oh, now that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what words to use for that.
I know, because it's like Nicolas Cage is such a internet, how do I put this?
Everybody's got an opinion on Nicolas Cage.
Right, exactly.
Good, bad, or ugly.
Right, and right. And there's so many memes out there. I'm sure there's hundreds of thousands. You just gotta love the guy, though. He's so eccentric in everything he does. Mm-hmm. Yes, over the top, melodramatic as much as possible. But I love everything he's done, really. I mean, I love the National Treasure films and all that.
I enjoyed those. I have a handful of Nicolas Cage movies that are among my favorites.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a daughter that if he's in it, she's just not going to go there. I found online once a pillowcase all covered in different Nicolas Cage images, and I threatened to buy it for her.
Oh my gosh. Oh, perfect gift.
That would have been harmful to her.
That would have been traumatizing.
So I decided not to.
Have nightmares for weeks. But yeah, no, I really want to see this film because it is about Nicolas Cage playing himself. Mm-hmm. And Pedro Pascal, who plays the Mandalorian, is in it as well. And he plays Nicolas Cage's like number one fan, essentially. You know? But I
those
thought
can be scary.
Those can be scary. Well, we've all seen Misery, you know, or we've read the book. I thought that's kind of where they were going to go with it. You know, like Pedro Pascal is a very obsessive fan, but no, they just kind of embark themselves on this misadventure. Mm-hmm. And because Nicolas Cage is feeling like his career is kind of at a really strong halt, you know, he's considering maybe like retirement and stuff, but he's got friends of his that are encouraging him to, no, get back in the limelight, you know, get your career back going, you know, because it's been a while since we've seen Nicolas Cage in action.
It's true. He hasn't done anything really recently, has he? Although beside, what was it called? Willy's Wonderland?
Yes.
That was fairly recent.
Have you seen that?
I did. I watched it.
What an interesting idea.
It was definitely not my typical type of watch.
Yeah.
And so I came away with mixed feelings.
Right. I did too, because first of all, I love the idea that he played a character that said nothing. Yeah. I thought that was intriguing. I thought, okay, here you see Nicolas Cage talk a lot, go on.
He's very verbose most of the time.
Yeah, and I thought, wow,
which I can relate to.
Right. Well, me too. Let's face it, I'm a thespian, you know. So, no, I thought Willy's Wonderland was just a very interesting idea because, you know, it's like Chuck E. Cheese with animatronics that are going to kill you. And here he is just playing this guy, a silent character, just killing him off.
And he never forgets to take his break.
Exactly.
That's what cracks
playing the
me
pinball
up.
machine and drinking the soda. Like, it's like his like energy elixir or something, you know. I love that movie. But beyond beyond that, gosh, it's been so many years since the last new Nicolas Cage film that I've seen besides that one. And I thought, okay, so The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which the title itself is interesting too. I'm like, wow, okay. But again, it's a play on Nicolas Cage himself.
Right.
Of course,
and I've seen, face value, that sounds like a very full of himself type of title.
Yeah.
But I think, and I've seen other actors and actresses do this, where they're just totally playing with and leaning into this reputation that they have, you know. Yeah. And I can appreciate it's like their ability to laugh at themselves.
Exactly. And I've seen maybe an interview or two on The Fabulous World of YouTube where he discussed that. He said, yeah, I wanted to do this film because I'm very aware of the internet and the very interesting people out there that have a fascination with me. He's like, I'm very aware of that. So he goes, yeah, I thought, you know what? Why not do this film? Yeah. So I respect that. As you said, I really do respect that they can poke fun at themselves and also be in a movie that the whole time is poking fun at themselves. That's one that I'm definitely intrigued to see this June.
Well, I'm going to be, as I typically do, talking about books.
Absolutely. Yes. No, I'm actually intrigued to hear what you got.
So I like to do a mix of both fiction and nonfiction. So I'm going to start with the nonfiction. Okay. And I tend to really enjoy memoir type things. Not necessarily a full biography, although, that as well. Sure. When I was in middle school, I just read endless amounts of biographies. I was just fascinated with different people. And so I really like memoirs that give more of a snapshot of someone's life experience. And so the first one that I'm going to talk about it's called Dinner for One, How Cooking in Paris Saved My Life. And I'm hoping to say this right. The author's name is Satanya de Cries. And she was an American who had married a French man and was living in Paris. And unexpectedly, she got divorced. She was heartbroken and all of this. And it was kind of her re-examination of her life, learning to start over, cooking for one being that key point of, hey, we were a couple and now we're not. But she rediscovered who she was by living in Paris as a single, living in Paris and seeing that culture and that world through the life that was other than the one that she had imagined for herself.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so
that is encouraging.
I do tend to really enjoy memoir type of things, sneak peeks into someone's life. Years and years ago, I read a similar book, and I don't have the title in front of me, but it was about someone who lived in New York City. I think it was called something along the lines of A Year of Not Eating Out in New York City.
Oh, okay.
Which is significant in and of itself because that's what people do. Yeah. That's that in New York City, you just, not a lot of people cook at home. They go out. And so she spent an entire year just cooking and organizing dinner parties or just for herself and her partner and just that whole memoir fulling. And not all of the memoirs I like are about food, but a number of them are. I enjoyed reading Julia Child's memoirs.
That's what it kind of reminded me of was Julie and Julia,
I love
that's
that
kind
movie.
of what it reminds me of. For some reason, I really thought you were going to say Julia Child for a moment. Wait a minute. But no, she's been married most of her life. You know what I mean? She's been okay. I love that movie. And the idea of just, like you said, discovering something about yourself, building on yourself out of something that was so heartbreaking and so emotionally, I love stories like that there's that sense of hope within yourself.
Yes. And, because we're all going to encounter heartbreak.
Yeah.
And getting to view someone else's life and not just that they have a heartbreak, even if it's not the same thing, they've experienced heartbreak and you can imagine what it would be like because you've had your own.
Oh, yeah.
But how did they rediscover and what can you learn from that journey?
Right.
And I feel like I like getting the perspective of another person's life experience. Mm-hmm. But also, even if it's one little crumb of thing, can I learn from what they did that I could apply to my journey?
Absolutely. And again, I use the word encouraging because it really is. You read through it and you start kind of digging within yourself, things that you're like, wow, I'm surprising myself of what I could maybe change differently, within my life somehow, some way. even though sometimes there's not really a necessity for the change. You know what I mean? Like in some way, I have those moments where I'll read something or watch something, in a movie and just go, just makes you just kind of reevaluate things.
Yeah.
And,
and
I love that. Yeah.
I think that's healthy.
It is. Absolutely. It's the human soul you're, rediscovering more and more about. And I love that. So that's the thing I may have to check out.
Yeah.
May look into. I'm not one with the culinary arts. I can make a mean grilled cheese and, maybe some good spaghetti, but that's about it.
But you can rock out on the keyboard.
I can rock it on the keyboard though. Yeah, that's right. Which maybe I should segue into my second.
Why don't we do that?
So our library of things.
Yes.
We did have the rollout keyboards for a while, which I know as a keyboardist, because I'm in a band and I've played for quite some time. I'm just going to gloat here for 1 second or two. Maybe
Enjoy
for a
your
minute.
moment.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Here we go. All right. Listen up. I thought, these rollout keyboards, they're cute and all. And I think they're great for kids, like to learn. That's how I learned, was on a base. I mean, not a rollout keyboard, but it's a simple little keyboard, and I learned like Mary Had a Little Lamb and all that stuff. And then my mom and dad they got me a keyboard, but it was one of those Casio keyboards that the keys light up.
Oh.
So it taught me my chords and certain songs to play, like Beatles and, For Elise and things like that,
Sure.
So from classic rock to classics or classical. I learned from that. And then I taught myself, not to sound like a prodigy here, but I taught myself how to play piano and how to read a little bit, sight read. But then I had somebody kind of teach me a little bit further into that. But the Library of Things now is going to have full-size keyboards that are actually like keyboards.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Not to date myself, but to follow up on that, when I was in middle school, my mom decided I needed to learn piano.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so I would go over for my lesson, and it didn't last long. And I think this is one of the main reasons we had no piano for practice. And so I was given a cardboard keyboard to just kind of, that's just not conducive because there's no feedback if you've hit the right or wrong note.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like, and there's just this whole fingering thing that goes with, and it's like, that just can't be reproduced on a piece of cardboard. I mean, I suppose someone who is a prodigy could, but I was not that person. To be fair, I don't know that I would have taken off if I'd had a proper keyboard to practice on. But that is the nice thing about that being a part of the Library of Things.
Yeah.
Nobody knows when they introduce their child to an instrument or themselves to an instrument that they've thought about playing, whether it's going to really click or not. And before the investment of hundreds of dollars potentially.
Oh, yeah.
You can try it out.
Exactly.
See if it clicks.
Oh, yeah.
Is there an interest? Is there a skill there that could be encouraged?
I think it's wonderful because it's one of those things where, especially in schools right now, I mean, it's gotten better over the years, but I know there was a time where, they were cutting music programs left and right.
Yes.
And then there's kind of, word through the grapevine that may happen again. And I know, and I hate hearing that because music is so important in our lives. I mean, we all listen to music.
Yes.
If you're the kind of person that goes, I hate music, I'm like, yeah.
Well, I've always said that on my planet, music is like the weather.
Yeah.
It's just a part of the atmosphere. It exists.
Yeah.
I would feel like the gravity had gotten shut off.
Yeah.
Music was no longer present.
Right. Yeah. I'm eclectic with my music taste. I can branch from something pop to independent rock to this, to that. And, and I'm always going to try to listen to something new on my, I have my Apple Music, and I'll just kind of let it play through some different songs or different artists that I'm like, I've never would have even thought to look into that. But, so to encourage playing music, I think is great. And, again, like you said, some people surprise themselves that, oh, wow, I never even thought I would want to pick up the saxophone or pick up the violin or pick up the piano and suddenly surprise myself that I can actually do it. And that's kind of what happened with me as a kid. I just watched my choir teacher in elementary school play on the piano, and I was just fascinated by that instrument. I just went, I want to do that.
Yes. Well, exactly. Exactly. And I feel like there are things that just click with us for some undetermined reason.
Right.
And if you've got access to the materials, then that can be a game changer for someone.
Exactly. And that's why the Library of Things, I'm so glad that we have that now.
So next up on my list, this is my second nonfiction pick, is Dear Papa, The Letters of Patrick and Ernest Hemingway. So Patrick was Ernest Hemingway's son.
Okay, yeah.
And it's basically the correspondence that spanned over 20 years between father and son.
Oh, I bet that's going to be fascinating.
And glimpses into how he interacted with his children, the things he did with them, how he spent his time. I mean, there's that larger than life image that we have of famous people like Ernest Hemingway, who, of course, is a name that almost anybody recognizes, whether they've read his books or not.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so what is behind the curtain? What is the family like?
Yeah.
What were those interactions? What were those personal moments? What were the conflicts?
Oh, and I bet that's so fascinating because Ernest Hemingway is a interesting character to learn about more and more.
Yes.
You're just like, wow, he did that. He did that. Is it that picture, that one, you know which one I'm talking about?
I think so.
The turtleneck with the beard.
Yes,
and he looks like a fisherman that just, fought off Moby Dick or something, like he really does. I'm just like, wow, he looks so epic. I don't know why, but he's got a story of himself that I would love to learn more and more about. So,
right. I'm often fascinated, especially if it's whether an actor or writer that I particularly enjoy. What was the life that shaped them into the author or the actor or the artist that they became?
Oh, see, now that's something I would love to look into for sure. So this is from the son's perspective. I mean, as far as...
Well, the author's names were, of course, Ernest himself, because he was the author of the part of the letters, and then Patrick, and honestly, I didn't include it. So there's another Hemingway that was involved probably in the editing process.
Okay.
And so, but you were talking about that image of him. And of course, he is the writer who wrote The Old Man and the Sea. I believe today, I don't know if this has always been true. I'm really curious actually when I think about it. Famous people tend to have certain personas. And so for some people, those are intentional, created personas.
Okay, yeah.
And I think for some people, that's just really who they were.
Right.
Ernest Hemingway, I feel like back in the day, he was just being Ernest Hemingway.
Sure, yeah.
Other people are creating an image.
Yeah.
And so when we get to read those personal correspondences, you actually get to parse that out.
Yeah.
How much was Ernest Hemingway's public persona a reflection of just who he was as a person? Right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think of the author that really fascinates me because I've watched a documentary and I read a book about J.D. Salinger, Catcher in the Rye.
Right.
About his reclusive lifestyle. And there's a documentary that I watched about it. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I've read Catcher in the Rye and I love the book. Mm-hmm. But I really wanted to know about who the author was. And apparently he just kind of shut himself off from the world.
He was very reclusive, yes.
Yeah. I'm so fascinated by things like that. Like, why? Because he was such a social guy. And when he was an author, like when he was writing all these, wonderful books at the time and then just unexpectedly, he just goes, I'm tired of this lifestyle. I don't like this. I don't like pretending to be somebody that I'm not. And again, the documentary kind of digs deep into that, but then when it gets to the point of him living more reclusively, like the Howard Hughes story, you know what I mean? Like what was he like? And then you saw that the movie, the Aviator with Leonardo DiCaprio. And I thought that's really interesting. And there's so many, biographies, about Howard Hughes and I'm sure on J.D. Salinger. But again, I'm just fascinated by why did they decide at one point in their life to just go, I'm done with this, you know? And like, it's just, I don't know, things like that, just really intrigue me. Yeah.
Especially when it's an abrupt change of behavior.
Exactly. And that's why I was just like, okay. That's something that I would really be intrigued to learn more, especially Ernest Hemingway. I'd love to learn more about him. Yeah. What did Ernest Hemingway do, that, made him so prolific? He was quite on the adventure, I guess.
He did things and wrote about it. Perhaps,
and exactly right. So who knows? The mystery builds on because, unless you're with the guy 24/7, you really don't know.
So what's next up on your list?
Like I said, I'm a movie buff, but the next one that I saw that's coming out this June, The Northman by Robert Eggers, who did The Witch and The Lighthouse. And now he's doing The Northman.
Okay.
He just loves those titles with or the singularity subject matter. Yeah, he loves that. The Northman, is coming out on DVD, and I'm fascinated by this filmmaker, first of all, because he started off with the company A24.
Okay.
Which, if you're familiar with the company A24, they make all those very like art house type movies, like Midsommar. They did that.
I see.
Yeah, the very like the cinematography is all very peculiar. It's just, how do I describe this? Very, like I said, art house, but not too art house, if that makes sense, but very independently made is what it looks like.
Somewhere between the blockbuster and the obscure.
Yes. It's actually a perfect way to put it, because that's how Robert Eggers, especially, that's how he films. Like if you've seen The Witch, I think it's beautifully filmed, especially well acted. He did a lot of research to see how they spoke in that time.
Interesting.
And I think it was the 17th century, during the Salem witch trials and all.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for people who really do their homework and aren't just trying to throw out a film or a book. Yeah,
that's what, I mean, he did that with the Witch, but also this movie, The Northman.
Okay.
Which is about Vikings.
I was wondering, because I'm like, with a title, it can be almost anything, but it made me think initially of the Vikings.
Yeah, and it's got really a stellar cast, Ethan Hawke and Nicole Kidman, Willem Dafoe.
See, she's someone I'm a big fan of. Yeah. I like Nicole Kidman.
But it's a story about revenge. It looks like the kind of film that has that Shakespearean drive where the main actor, his father is killed off wrongfully. By a relative. I think through the trailer I saw that very exactly. Yeah. And I went, okay, I see where this is going. And then there's this really interesting scene in the trailer. The kid, he's rowing off in this boat in the ocean saying, I will avenge you, father. I will. I promise. I promise. And then, years have progressed to where he's strengthened up and now he's taking revenge for his father's death. Now he can
make good on that promise.
Yes. And so again, those stories of revenge, they can be quite intense.
Yes.
But for a good reason. Also, you got to be careful with how you do that. You know what I mean? You can't just...
Yes. That, I feel like, and this is true of both books and movies, they allow us to explore feelings and experiences that we don't actually have to live.
Right.
But you got to be careful about the takeaway.
Yeah.
Because that could drive people to do things that they should not be doing.
There's that revelation in the end of who was really the villain. Was it all meant to happen, or was it a purposeful cause? What were they meant to do that? Holding a grudge for so long, and then you hold it for so long that you've turned yourself into this villainous.
Did you become the enemy that you hated?
Exactly. And that's why I'm like, sometimes you got to be careful with that when you tell that in a story. But I'm intrigued to see how Robert Eggers does, with The Northman in that sense. And because his last film, The Lighthouse, dealt with the cabin feverish, two men stuck on an island in this lighthouse and they're stuck there for like weeks.
That sounds bad.
Exactly. Willem Dafoe too. I mean, could you imagine being stuck on an island with...
He's right off the bat a little crazy.
Yeah. And then Robert Pattinson, of Twilight fame. But I know I'd hate to say that because he really has grown as an excellent actor. I've heard in an interview that he had where he thought he lost his dignity when he did Twilight.
Interesting.
And then he got it back when he started doing more serious stuff. That wasn't part of a fandom base. Because he was also in Harry Potter, And so, he was doing all this like big franchise stuff, and now he's like, no, I want to start doing things that people are going to go, he's doing that? Like The Lighthouse was one where it's an interesting film, and you go, wow, that's Robert Pattinson,
Yeah.
He's doing fantastic, but also it's a weird movie. But
I actually saw him... I wish I could remember the name of the movie, but I remember it made me do wait, isn't that the guy from Twilight?
Yeah.
And it was a family drama and it was really, really good and it was really well done.
Yeah.
He did a brilliant job of it. So,
well, you're seeing that now with a lot of different actors. What was it? The Spider-Man film, the new one that came out with Andrew Garfield suddenly getting this recognition, for how amazing of an actor he really is. Because I remember when the Spider-Man films that he did just alone, the Amazing Spider-Man films, critics especially, just bashed those films.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, he's not Peter Parker. He's not Spider-Man. Why would they ever cast that guy,
Right.
And now people are like, no, we want him back. He has a fan base that they want him back, and so when he appeared in No Way Home, sorry, spoiler alert if anybody's listening, oh my goodness, but by now you had to have seen it, right?
It's been out long enough.
Exactly. Okay, so not too soon. I recall seeing a video, again, on the fabulous world of YouTube, where somebody was illegally filming in the theater room. When his scene came and he appeared, the whole theater room just burst into cheers.
Wow.
You know, and I thought that's so great. But Andrew Garfield's an excellent actor in many other things besides playing Spider-Man. Again, like Harry Potter, you know, Daniel Radcliffe, he's an excellent actor too.
Yes.
But he's always going to be known as Harry Potter.
Elijah Wood.
Elijah Wood is
Yes.
going to be known as Frodo Baggins, you know.
But he's done so much more than that.
But he's done so much, and,
Yes.
and they're all great, fantastic actors that, you feel for them. But then you got to go, you know what? Hey, I did a lot of work. I did a lot of hard work on those films to make the fans pleased. So I'm glad I did it, but I'm also glad I'm doing even better work,
Right.
you know.
It's nice to get to that point where now you can kind of chart your own course a little bit.
Yeah.
Instead of having, I mean, I guess it's tricky if you're typecast.
Yeah.
It's harder to branch out. But
Exactly.
if you have established yourself, then you've got a little bit more say in what projects you choose.
Right.
So
It also helps to have a good agent, I think.
That's true.
I mean, I don't
Accurate.
know the whole Hollywood style, but
Right.
maybe so, but just to prove yourself. And again, just talking about rediscovering something about yourself, like, oh, I could do that, even though you've never done it before, probably, you know, like as an actor. And again, being a thespian, you know, a theater major and whatnot. You know. When I get into that mode, I start talking like this too. But yeah, no, I know what that's like because I've always been typecast as the goofball, the character. I am a character actor because I've played a variety of different characters. I played from an abusive husband in a show called Dark at the Top of the Stairs by William Inge. Very dark role. I had to go into a very dark place to do that. I hated myself, you know, most of the time because I hated the character I was portraying.
you're embodying something that you could not.
Because it's a very dark at the top of the stairs. It's in the title. But I played this husband in 1920s Oklahoma, where his wife buys a dress for their daughter and he, you know, they're impoverished and he's like, you think money just grows on trees? You think you can just buy her? And she's like, no, she needs to feel beautiful for the school dance. You have to understand. And I'm like, no. This isn't about a school dance. This is about us right now. And it escalates from there.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, you know, and then I played from that to, Boy George in Wedding Singer the Musical. So
arranged.
Yeah,
you have arranged. Okay. All right.
So sorry to go off tangent there, but yeah, it's fun. That's why I haven't acted in a while, but I'd like to get back to it. So, but anyway, The Northman. Definitely check it out. I'm definitely going to check it out. If you haven't seen Robert Eggers, previous films, definitely watch them. The Witch, The Lighthouse, and now The Northman.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by you saying it's got a Shakespearean bent because I like Shakespeare in and of itself if it's well done, but I like things that are kind of Shakespeare adjacent that have the vibe. Like I remember watching the Brother Cadfael mysteries.
Yes.
And it took me a long time just because I was swept along with the story, realizing that their cadence and their discussion and their vocabulary, not surprisingly, if I'd have thought about it, was very Shakespearean in nature.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised I didn't notice that before, but I just enjoyed it.
Exactly.
And then one day I just went, hey, wait a minute. So the fact that you mentioned the Shakespearean element to it made me intrigued. So I'll definitely be putting that on my hold list.
Absolutely. And I mean, it looks beautifully shot. The cinematography is, I don't know what cinematographers he's approaching, but they're the best in the business because from what I'm seeing just from, small clips in a trailer, I'm like, oh my gosh, so beautiful. It just hooks you in. So,
next up on my list, now we're getting into the fiction, which to be fair is more my jam. I do like nonfiction, but my go-to is typically fiction. So there's a book called The Drowning Sea by Sarah Stewart Taylor. Now it's book 3 in the Maggie Darcy series.
Oh, okay.
And what intrigued me about this one is, as I read the description, is it's got that, even though it's set in the modern day, it's got that very gothic mystery kind of vibe, which is definitely something I really enjoy. I don't only read that type of thing. I do read very eclectically, but I really, really enjoy that gothic, mysterious vibe.
Yes.
And so it's set in Ireland.
Oh, okay.
Even though the main character is a New York detective.
Okay.
There's some family connection with Ireland. There was a mystery involving a cousin that went missing years ago, and that's addressed in her first book.
Oh, okay.
So the first book in that series was The Mountains Wild, and that is the book in which her cousin goes missing, and she comes over from New York to Ireland to look into what has happened.
Okay.
And so that's the beginning of her journey. And since I haven't read either of them yet, and I'm notorious for finding something that sounds really good to read and go, oh, that's book 3. I have to go read book 1 now. But that being said, I'm really interested. And for those that are already familiar with this writer and the series, then you can anticipate the newest release. So that'll be great.
That will be great. All right. Treat it just like, oh, it's a prequel, like I've done that. I'm trying to think of which series it was. Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh.
But I haven't read from the beginning, The Magician's Nephew onward.
Yeah. The thing about that particular series was it was not, when it was originally released, it wasn't released in a chronological order.
Yeah.
But they've done sets where the first book is The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the third book, I think, is The Magician's Nephew.
Right. But
that's the prequel. But now you can get sets where it does it chronologically, where it starts out with The Magician's Nephew and forward.
So I'm sure C.S. Lewis or so, it was just like laying a foot down, like, all right, now, this is how it should be.
Not how I wrote it. Yeah.
Exactly. This is the beginning. And I didn't realize that until I saw on the back of the book.
I was familiar with the series anyway, but there's been a number of times someone will come up and say, well, I want number 3 in that series. And I'll go, okay. Yeah. Now, there's 2 ways it's been released. When you say number 3, which one are we talking about?
Anytime I look through some, new books or pull one out and I'm like, let me see. And then, I read on the back of the synopsis or inside. And, but then I realized that, from the same author that brought you this and this. Mm-hmm. And, now they're on a new adventure. And I'm like, oh, so this is not the first. Okay. I'll still read it. Mm-hmm. I like starting at a point with books, if it's in a series. Now, I've never done this with like Harry Potter or not even Lord of the Rings. I've tried to read chronological, where I've read in the way that it should be read. But some books I remember James Patterson, detective.
Cross?
Alex Cross. My name. That's what stood out to me. I went, ooh, there's a book about Alex. And, to gloat even more. But yeah, and then I remember reading, I can't remember, but it was, like book 5 or 6 of Alex Cross. And then I remember going like, oh wow, okay, well, I need to go back. I need to see what, where's the starting point with this character?
Right.
But it's always nice to start kind of at a place where he's been through it all. What's next? Maybe this is even more climactic, that kind of thing. And so I would do that. I would start reading in the middle of a series of books that, I would never start from the beginning. I would just start kind of midway and then I would work my way back. Just cause I don't know. The character's already well developed and I'm sure by this point the author himself or herself has it figured out. I always like reading about a very well written out character that's been,
I personally, and this is just me, some people really like the chronological style.
Sure.
And I like it to a degree. If I find that there's a series, I will absolutely go to the first book and read forward. But that being said, I kind of like how the characters got these bits about their personality or their life that you're like, why are they like that? And then as their character develops, you go, oh, I see what shaped this.
New surprises.
Or why this happens or why this has become their habit or why they hate this. I guess I just don't like everything all at once. It's like getting to know a person.
Right.
There's just little snippets that we learn as we interact with them. And so as I read a book and a character and you know more and more about their life or their history, then you're like, oh, this makes so much more sense.
This makes so much more sense.
Yes.
And you're right. I think the building blocks are always nice to follow along with rather than suddenly you have the whole wall built. And I write scripts. That's kind of my thing right now that I do off and on. I write film scripts or series scripts. I've been working on a mystery right now called Purple Tree, which is about an organization of these agents that actually go out and they kill people, but with their consent. So say a person who's terminally ill.
Okay.
They give their consent for them to, like the Death with Dignity Act,
Right.
It's like that, but it's a secret organization of these people that go out to kill people with their consent. And then I imagine, where could I go with that? Let's see. Conspiracy theories. There's this group of conspiracy theorists out there who think that their loved ones weren't just killed naturally or anything like that.
Die of natural causes.
Exactly.
Right.
That they were killed off by somebody, and they start connecting these little things here and there of, there's an organization out there. So yeah, I things like that. Like I'm working on this main character, Ethan, who gets dragged into this organization inadvertently because he witnesses his uncle, who's been working with the organization for years, on the job, but he wasn't supposed to.
Oh, yeah.
And so his uncle gives him a choice. Either he kills him off or he joins him into the organization because he's like, I can't just let you go from this. They'll hunt you down. They'll find you because they know that you know what I know.
And nobody can know.
Nobody can know. Exactly. Yeah. All in all, nobody can know. All right. Even though we know these things, it's a really kind of, on my downtime, whenever I get a thing that I'm working on these scripts. But, again, like you said, it is always interesting, even as a writer, to see what new developments you make from these characters. Like, why did they do that? Like you add in these little things that they do, these little, details of what they're doing. And why would you put that on there? You just wanted to put it on there. Like I do that a lot. I'll say, they did this. And then later on you go, that's why they did that.
That's why they did that. Mm-hmm.
Like, because you have to kind of explain yourself too. Like, why did I write that? And then, but if somebody's reading this, I got to tell them what it is, why they did that. What was the purpose?
It keeps the character from being too two-dimensional. I'm trying to say that because I've got two twos there.
Two twos. But so again, the mystery is always one of my fascinations, and book-wise, movie-wise, whichever it will, or show-wise, and that's why writing scripts, or sometimes I'll write like little short stories, novellas or something like that, and just do that, and kind of like Stephen King does with some of his stuff. Like he'll write those short stories, and that was one more thing I wanted to add was there's a book called Stephen King's Dollar Babies, not by Stephen King, but it is like collections of his writings but interviews of dollar babies, which are short stories that filmmakers would, buy for $1 from Stephen King, because Stephen King's like, yeah, sure. Here, I'm going to give it to you for $1 and you can go ahead and produce it and all that stuff. Do with it what you will, It's a book that I believe is newer. I think it came out last summer, but it's something to really look into. But Stephen King's also another author that I just love as well.
All right. Well, for my last fiction book that I'm going to mention is, now this is the sequel to a book that I have read. Okay. And it's a duology, so it's just a 2-part series. But the first book, which I'll mention before I unveil this title, it was called For the Wolf, and it's by Hannah Whitten. And I think I probably mentioned that in a previous podcast. I love retellings of fairy tales and fables and things like this. And so this is a take of the Red Riding Hood story. Where there's this kingdom where the lineage is through the women, and the first daughter is for the throne, and the second daughter is for the wolf. And so if a second daughter is born, then at a certain age, she is taken to what's known as the Wilderwood and sent in. It basically is a sacrifice to keep peace between the kingdom and this dangerous land and the creatures that inhabit it.
Oh, wow.
And so I've read For the Wolf because they started with the second daughter. Okay. And as expected, of course, the fables and tales that they grew up with and were taught are not exactly accurate. And so when she goes into the woods, she discovers that what she has been trained to believe her entire life is not exactly true. Okay. And so I completed that book. It was really good. I feel like it could be adapted to a movie really well.
That's why I'm visually just,
there's at least one scene that I swear I could hear it in surround sound. Yeah. When I saw that one, when I read that one scene.
Oh, that's really intriguing.
The sequel that is being released this month is called For the Throne, which of course is the older daughter and the whole interaction and what becomes of her. And there's of course all these things going on in the background between the Wilderwood, but also these characters that are coming into play in the kingdom that are manipulating and controlling and steering and trying to help and trying to harm and things of that nature. And so when I first read For the Wolf, It didn't catch me right away. But again, I do tend to like slow burns.
Okay.
Rather than something that dives me right in. I like a little bit of a build.
Yeah.
And so when I finished it, I'm like, well, that wasn't bad. I didn't give it my highest marks, but I enjoyed it. But I found that now that I've sat with the story for a while, I'm really looking forward to this one coming out, and I've already placed it on hold.
I mean, all the books that you've talked about are incredible. I mean, but this one definitely is up there, the upper echelon. You know what I mean? Like it's up there to where I'm like, oh, okay, I may have to really look into this. But for the Wolf, and then the next one, this upcoming one,
the second
For the Throne.
one is For the Throne. Mm-hmm.
I think I'm really intrigued about more of the development of the kingdom and how this all came to be.
Exactly.
I really would like to know, and I'm
because
sure
it's a thing, as you read the story, that has gone on for generations. And they talked about past daughters that were sent into the wilder wood and things of that nature.
Ooh,
and how their families adapted to that. And what's really intriguing and For the Wolf, which I won't give away too much, but the interaction between the second daughter, who is basically born to be a sacrifice, and her mother, and her basically the distance she maintains from this daughter that she knows is just not going to live past a certain birthday, at least in her mind's eye.
Wow. Gosh.
And so it's
very
really
deep. And I love things like that where they take old fairy tales,
Yes, me
just
too.
Simple fables and
really enjoy fable spinoffs or even just fables that I'm less familiar with from a culture that I've not read as much of.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I love how they expand that world.
Yes.
Just like, there's so much more that we could do with that. And again, kind of the same with what we were talking about with Shakespeare earlier.
Yes.
I mean, how to play around with that. I think it's so fascinating that somebody could just sit there and go like, well, what if, what if this happened in that world?
That is the beginning,
idea.
I feel like, of every single story. Either what if or why. Because fairy tales are built out of the whys.
Right.
Why does the sun do this or the moon do that? Or anything, and a fable is born.
Well, yeah, and working in the Reed Center, working with kids, sometimes we'll read these fairy tales or these books of classic fairy tales, especially because I'm doing the puppets, thing.
Right.
And our puppet show each has a classic fairy tale, like this one that we have coming up is Jack and the Beanstalk, because our summer reading program is themed growth. So I thought, Jack and the Beanstalk, and reading about it, I'm like, oh, wow, it's a lot darker than I recall.
Well, and the original tales were much darker than what we currently have in our storied books.
Yeah, and then
which is probably for the best when you're talking about bedtime reading.
Right, exactly, because I was like, where is the message here for kids,
Right.
And I looked up that because, like Little Red Riding Hood
right.
is about, don't talk to strangers, that,
right.
there's a message there with that, and then Jack and the Beanstalk is take initiative of the things that are given to you, that kind of thing, with the beans and, he takes it, things like that. And you're like, we're teaching kids these messages, but then you learn about the truth behind the story of, what it really is. And you're just like, what? Over time, I'm sure these stories, as classic as they are, have been edited down to where, now they're kid friendly. But when they first came out, the Brothers Grimm stories, especially, were very grim. So, it makes sense. Yeah. Cause then you're thinking Brothers Grimm. Okay. That makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
Why would they be called that and make these nice, cheerful tales for kids? I think that's For the Wolf, and then For the Throne is the new one that's coming out.
That's right.
Which I think that's just a fascinating story. So.
We have so many things, literally hundreds of items added every month, and it's really exciting. And to be totally transparent here, all the books that I talk about are books that I literally want to read, but my life not being something that spends nothing but reading books, I often don't even get to all of these books.
Right.
Because there's just so many out there. And these are just the ones I'm mentioning on the show, not to mention my long list of books like, I want to read that. I'm ready to do that, so.
But no, I mean, since I just talked about movies and then our library of things, now I have something that I can think about reading.
Right.
In the near future, which that's kind of my goal this year is to read more.
Yes.
Working at a library.
Carve out that time.
Exactly. And there's
the minute I have finally turned everything else off and I start reading, I'm there and I'm present and I enjoy it. It's getting to that moment of turning everything else off that's challenging.
Yeah. Because I do that. I'll start reading a book. I'll get halfway through it and then I stop and then things intervene. Then you just forget over time about the book and you're like, oh, now I kind of
got to start over.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, because I forgot certain key points. I'm going to continue where I, left off and I'm going to be like, wait, what? Oh, yeah. Why? I have to go back and flip some pages and go, oh, that's why. Okay. Reread. I might as well just reread the whole book again. Right. Or reread the
Well, this is the perfect time for that because on June 1st, we started our summer reading program, which of course is not limited to children.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And so adults are very welcome to be a part of the reading program and staff members are participating. And it was a lot of fun. A part of that launch was just this influx of people signing up and things like that. And so I'm looking forward to the books that I'm going to check off as I read this summer.
Yeah.
To complete the goal for this summer's reading program is simply to read 10 books.
You can even expand from that. You can read 10 more books. If you want. Yeah, with our log books that are handed out, the goal is 10, but again, you can get another log book and read 10 more. We encourage so much reading as much as possible. So like with our kids programs, the 300 books before third grade and 1,000 books before kindergarten, you can always look into that through the remainder of the year too. So, for the remainder of so many years before they get into kindergarten, before they get into third grade, we really try to encourage kids especially to, get a good starting point on reading.
Absolutely.
And then just expand from that into adulthood, which I'm still trying to do, but I'll get there. I promise. All right.
Well, thank you, Alex, for joining me today. Yeah. It's been fun talking about movies and things and books and all the many, many things that the library has to offer.
Absolutely.
TBR is a series of the EVPL Footnotes podcast. Please like, follow, and subscribe for more great episodes. For comments or questions, our email address is podcast@evpl.org.